about 2 months ago, we started doing like apologetics and just like we have a table that goes around campuses, just says, "Why aren't you a Christian?" So I'd like to explain to anyone that doesn't know like the tag argument and just how this like debunks like atheism, because that's something I feel like I've done research in all the other religions, stuff like that, but atheism, it's just some of these people, and obviously it boils down to a heart issue at that point, but can you just further explain like the tag argument?
You're talking about the transcendental argument?
Yes, and just how you have to have a logic, you can't even have logic without God.
Yeah, well, the question is, why can you and I and everybody in this room converse with one another and understand what each other is saying? You're not just a molecular machine. You're not just a moist robot. The reason that we can understand one another is because we have minds, not just brains, and there are these immaterial laws of logic that we are trafficking in. We don't create these laws. They're just there. We use these laws as a bridge so we can understand one another. Where do those laws come from? They're not made of molecules. The atheistic viewpoint that everything's made of molecules actually traffics in non-molecule stuff, like reason, like the laws of logic, like the laws of morality, like the laws of mathematics. Those laws, those realities are spiritual. They're not made of molecules. And so I wrote a book a number of years ago called Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. As soon as they open their mouths to say there is no God, they're trafficking in things that would only exist if God existed. So they're stealing from God in order to argue against him. And the ultimate problem with atheism is they have no ultimate cause. I mean, years ago I debated Christopher Hitchens. You guys know who Christopher Hitchens was? He was a brilliant British atheist who sounded more brilliant than he was because he had a British accent. In any event, Christopher Hitchens I loved because he was very witty, he was very well read, and Christians just loved him, even though sometimes he was very rude, even during the debates. And when he died, I wrote an article called Christopher Hitchens, Evidence of a Divine Being. I don't have enough faith to believe that a vibrant personality like Christopher Hitchens came into existence with no intelligence, that there's no intelligence behind him. The same thing is true with Charlie Kirk. The same thing is true with you and with me. How do the four laws or the four forces of nature, the strong and weak nuclear forces, electromagnetism, and gravity, how do those four forces give you a mind and give you these immaterial laws we're all trafficking in right now? They don't. There's an ultimate uncaused first cause. Even Aristotle knew this. And you can't even do science without causality. That's what science is. It's a search for causes. If there is no ultimate cause, we wouldn't be here. Nothing would exist. That's the most scientific view. So you're ultimately going to get back to an uncaused first cause who's spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, and intelligent, and moral at the very minimum. You don't need the Bible to know that. You can just get there from reason.
Anything I guess if you could give one point about atheism too, like what would be your best thing?
Yeah, I think that, and I'll take this maybe a little bit different direction. When I'm talking with somebody who's an atheist, there's one of two things that I'm looking at, and really atheist or agnostic. What I want to know, first of all, is where their biggest stumbling block is. And the two places that I typically look is either going to be the resurrection or creation. And then I'm going to focus on that. And Charlie would say this all the time, in order to believe in the resurrection, there's only one miracle you really need to believe in, and that's creation. Because if you believe that God could create the world, then the resurrection is no problem in that sense. And so, I think being able to decipher that, obviously, a lot of what you're presenting is really kind of in the realm of presuppositional apologetics, which I think is a really strong place. We can look at it from a couple different angles, but I think it's really asking the questions rather than, if you're really trying to reach somebody, really asking the questions to know what their true barrier is so that you can speak to the question behind the question. And a lot of times they'll give these other reasons, but those are just the fences that are trying to protect the real issue of their heart, of the pain, of the church hurt that they have, the fact that their parents went through a divorce, the fact they had some sort of loss in their life. And, I think that it's important to not forget the emotional side of and the spiritual aspects to evangelism, in addition to those logical components. We have to think about the whole person in that scope. And so, but I couldn't say it better than this guy here.
By the way, one question to ask somebody who's not a Christian is, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? If the person hesitates or says, no, it's not a head problem, it's a heart problem.
All right. Well, thank you guys for taking time.